Hey, what is up YouTube? OpTic here bringing you another video of my Let's Talk series. This is actually my first video of this series, and basically what I would like to do is sit down and kind of talk my ideas through regarding Gears of War and things I might like to see, things I might like to see changed, etc. going into the future of the game. So for this episode, as the title suggests, we're going to be talking about roster locks. Now, for those of you who aren't aware, roster locks are basically when there's rules mandating the amount of roster changes or the ability to change your roster throughout a tournament, a season, a half a season, or just any sort of period of time during a competitive circuit or throughout an esport, basically. So for those of you who know Gears of War, you know that we just finished Season 1, and there are teams who had roster changes literally every single event. United changed rosters, I believe, almost every single event for the entire season. We've made a roster change. I believe Envy, or now Echo Fox, kept the same roster up until the season ended. Ghost made roster changes. Pretty much every one of the top teams made a roster change at some point during the season. And we find ourselves in a situation where when is too much, or when is it too much? You know, like, when are we seeing too many roster changes that might affect the state of the esport and might have orgs looking at us like, okay, they're kind of unstable? And I don't mean unstable like unstable mentally. Yes, we're rough and tough. That's not what I mean, though. I mean that unstable in the regards of when you want to, as an organization, want to invest into an esport, you want to usually invest for the long term. Most orgs don't like doing a short notice, one and done deal. They don't like doing and coming in and grabbing a team for one event. They want to invest long term. They want to be able to see growth out of their investment and returns coming through that team. So when they invest in a team, they want that team to be with them for a period of time. Now, I've seen contracts short, like 1 month. I've participated in one event contracts, but a lot of major orgs, which are what Gears of War needs, being that we've lost so many recently, they want to see long-term commitments to organizations. So they want to see 6 months, 1 year, 2-year contracts to guarantee that this roster is going to help the org basically see growth or value out of the money that it's investing. And one of the things that Gears of War is extremely guilty of is roster changes, and that is a major turnoff for orgs, because not only are you now dealing with contractual issues and inner team issues and possible setbacks on how your team performs, but you're dealing with the doubt that starts to create. Is this going to be a continuing thing? Are we going to keep seeing roster changes? Like, what is going to make these kind of things stop for my team? Now, in Gears of War, like I've said, we have a lot of teams that are guilty of that, and where it really gets bad is when it gets like outside of top 8, you go into top 12, top 16, open bracket. That's where it gets really, really bad, and teams don't know how to stay together. And it's kind of something that I've been a little upset about, because I feel like the skill gap in Gears of War is constantly getting wider and wider and wider, where you have 1 or 2 teams at the top, and then a little bit further down, you have maybe 1 or 2 teams, and then there's this massive gap, and the rest of the teams, and then another massive gap, and the teams that might be coming out of open bracket. And it's sad. You want to see good competition. The players at the top want to play against and practice against good teams. They want to feel like they earned a win, where the players at the bottom want to feel growth. They want to get to the top. They want to fight good fights. And we don't really see that right now in Gears of War. And I think a major part of it is the roster changes that we constantly see, and I think a solution to that could possibly be roster locks. Now, the potential issue with roster locks is, how do you mandate control over rosters when you don't have individual player control or team control in the form of contracts, similar to other leagues like LCS for League of Legends? And LCS is going to be something that I probably refer to a lot, because it's something that I'm more familiar with. It's another games esport that I'm more familiar with. So, and they're pretty established, so it's going to be easy for me to relate to them as kind of like a ideal scenario for where we would like to see Gears of War Esports grow to. But roster locks do need to take place in Gears Esports, and for me personally, I think I would like to see them maybe every 2 events you can make a roster change. That way you're guaranteed to keep the same roster for at least 2 events. That's probably like a 3, 4, maybe even 5 month commitment, depending on when the events are, and it will allow the time for teams to grow together. You won't have a situation where you have a team compete, then get frustrated that they didn't place as well as they thought they were going to when they were in their honeymoon phase, and then make a roster change, get another honeymoon phase, and then fail again. We don't want to see that over and over again throughout the season. We want to see the competition continue to get better, and we want to see the tournaments just get more competitive. Like, overall, I don't have another word for that. We just want more competition. And I'm not saying we as in OpTic Gaming, I'm saying we as a community want to see the game get more competitive. We want to see more teams show up out of nowhere, make it through open bracket, come into the top. We want to see more teams stick together and grow together and just work on that grind. Now, for amateur teams out there, I think you guys have a very poor perspective, and I'm not saying every single one of you, but a lot of you have a very poor perspective on how this works. A lot of you think that if you just keep grinding individually and you keep focusing on how well you do, you're going to make it to the top, which is partially true, and you could do that. But at the same time, if you're a bad teammate because you're so focused on yourself, you're not going to see that growth, and you're just going to keep jumping from team to team. You're going to be a part of the problem, and you're not going to see that growth that you want to see in terms of your placements at events. What really catches people's attention is when a team comes out of nowhere and makes a name for themselves. That's where a lot of these top players started. It's where a lot of players, my players included, made a name for themselves back in the Hypefestation days. And it's a work. It's work that you got to put in. It's respect that you got to earn. But it doesn't help when you change rosters constantly. It's only setting yourself back. And I have the same thing to say to pro teams. When you guys make constant roster changes, yes, it might seem like the great decision at that point in time. And the few weeks, even a month afterwards, where everybody's all happy that you've made this change, the honeymoon phase, as I call it, that might seem like a great point in time. You might seem like the greatest idea ever, but then you have that downfall, that drop off of where things start not going well. You start losing scrims, you start losing tournaments, and you go, what the hell happened? This sucks. I want out of this, blah, blah, blah. Drop this kid, drop that kid. And then we're back to the same issue. So overall, I think roster locks need to be mandated, at least for the top 12 teams, the teams that are in pool play, and hopefully create a good influence for the amateur teams who seem to change rosters even more frequently than the top teams. And by creating that influence, hopefully as a community, we will be able to have more stability, attract more organizations, and grow our esport to where we all want to see it go. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure to leave a like and let me know in the comments down below what you think about roster locks, what your ideas are. I'll be sure to read them. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I appreciate the support, and I will see you all in the next video.
Go.